Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you are watching us on our YouTube channel, that is called Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is our director of basketball recruiting and analyst, longtime college, AAU, and high school coach, Mr. David Sisk. And David, Jacob Turner, so excited because we have passed the 12,000 subscriber mark on our YouTube channel. So now he's pushing for 13,000. So I'm giving Jacob a plug and an attaboy, and I'm doing a little pushing for him. Make sure, if you have not subscribed to our channel, make Jacob happy, subscribe to the channel, and let's get to 13,000 by, I'd say, the end of November. That's a good goal, especially if football keeps winning with basketball coming. It really shouldn't be hard for us to get there by the end of November. We are here to discuss North Carolina basketball. The season is just around the corner. We continue previewing the Tar Heels. What we're doing here, we've got preview podcasts on each of the 5 starters. We've got one on the returning reserves, got one on the freshmen, and then Jacob, David, and I are going to do a fun, lengthy roundtable, just kind of talking Carolina basketball, looking ahead to the season, and it's going to be about as organic as it gets, Dave. And these are pretty organic too. We don't rehearse these. We don't often know the directions they will take. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what you had to say about Pete Nance, the Northwestern transfer, 4 years at Northwestern, was honorable mention all Big Ten last year. He averaged 14.6 points a game, 6.5 rebounds, 1.1 blocks, 49.7% from the floor, 45.2% from three, 42 for 91. So it's not like a guy who just shot a few of them. He attempted 91 threes. It's about 3 a game. For when the Wildcats played. So guy who played 2,588 minutes in the Big Ten. He is used to banging what I think are the nation's best collection of bigs that the Big Ten usually has every year. So he brings an element to North Carolina that Tar Heels did not have a year ago. And I think that's what makes him as intriguing as anybody they could have picked up from the portal. And I'm pretty sure you agree, David.
I do agree. In fact, you know where I've stood on this one for 6 months. When the transfer portal was going strong, who they were going to get, and I brought this up in Armando Baycott podcast that we did. I thought, there was a talk about the player out of Baylor, and I said, man, this is a guy that I want to see at North Carolina. Pete Nance. I think he's the perfect fit for what they need, and I think he's a tremendous talent. You look in the Big Ten last year, 14, and I'm looking down because I'm reading this off, 14.6 points, 6.5 rebounds, 2.7 assists, shot 76.8% free throws, 45.2% from three. So, man, like you said, the Big Ten, if you're a post player, it's a gauntlet, of bigs. And the numbers are there. His game is there. I think he's a perfect fit and complement for Armando Baycott. And, I just think it's a tremendous player and a tremendous fit that they're bringing in. And I'm excited to see him in a North Carolina uniform and just kind of see how all this unfolds.
I've watched a lot of film of him since before he committed. It goes back to late April last year. Started watching some stuff, watched a lot of it over. And one of the things that has been very consistent about him, David, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, is he's a guy that produces at a fairly high level, but he doesn't need to have the ball a ton to produce. He's a guy that doesn't have to have everything go through him to get his numbers. He found ways to be successful through the stuff that Northwestern was running. And I actually think the way he's going to be utilized in North Carolina better plays to his skill set. And he kind of hinted around about that too. We talked to him a couple of months ago because Chris Collins had him doing so much screening, so much stuff at the top of the key, and not a whole lot from the wing to the baseline in. And I think he's going to be utilized there at North Carolina. A lot of stuff's going to be run off of him in those areas as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing a guy that has more game than maybe we saw a year ago, and all that having an opportunity to come out, sort of like a flower blooming in the spring. I could see his game doing that at Carolina.
One thing I've noticed is that guys who have been in the transfer portal and come out of academic schools have really fared pretty well because he's a fifth-year senior. He's got the experience, so we know all that, and he's had successful experience on a high level. Like we said, playing in the Big Ten against the people we played against every night, and you look at those numbers. But look, I couldn't, I wouldn't have got a sniff at getting in Northwestern. I couldn't have got into Northeastern, Southwestern, or Southeastern, or any of them, particularly Northwestern. But
I went to Northwestern. I'm sorry to interrupt. I went to Northwestern's campus in the late 90s. My brother was living in Chicago. I took the train out there and walked around, and I felt like everyone was looking at me like, that guy doesn't belong here. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It reminds me of a story. A parent called me, a father, about 15 years ago, and his son was in between his junior and his senior year, and they were from South Carolina, and he just wanted to go tour some schools. And in South Carolina, when they were living in Tennessee, and they wanted to go back to South Carolina, he was going to visit his family, and they just wanted to go through and see some places. So, I called a couple of schools, and Wofford was one of them. I called and talked to the assistant coach there, who's now the head coach at Appalachian State, by the way. And I said, well, tell me about the kid. And I said, oh, he's decent, pretty good. He's about 6'7", It's got, so one thing he's got going for him, he said he's got he's got an ACT score of 31. And so I said, you might be interested, that might whet your appetite a little bit. He said, look, we got guys cleaning toilets over here with ACTs of 31. So, I was thinking, man, what kind of job could I get with my team? So
I'd be cleaning toilets.
Oh, I'm 31's cleaning toilets. I don't know what, I'm digging up dead bodies or something. I don't know what I'd be doing, but
or whacking them.
So, I just look at a guy that's coming out of there with his basketball IQ and acumen, that would be, that knows how to play the game. He's going to know how to, he's very, very skilled, going back to those numbers, can pass it, can handle it, can shoot it, can do all that. But he understands the game. He understands what to do when he's got the ball. He understands what to do, maybe more importantly, when he doesn't have the ball. He knows the game, knows how to play it. So, there's always going to be a learning curve when you're coming in at first and you're new, but I would think this would be about as minute of a learning curve as you could possibly have, seeing that he's a fifth-year senior that was a tremendous player at Northwestern.
Yeah, that's one of the things that guys were saying about him a month after he got there. They're like, oh, yeah, he's really smart. Picked up on everything right away. A couple of numbers real quickly. 6 times last year, he scored 20 or more points. He was at 15-plus points 14 times, 10-plus rebounds 6 times, 7-plus rebounds 13 times. He had multiple threes in 14 games, and he had 3 or more threes in 6 games. So he can go off, so to speak. Certainly a guy that can hit him in bunches, if you will, but didn't have to take a lot. It wasn't part of his game. Manek had games at Oklahoma where he attempted 11, 12, 13 threes in a game. You won't find anything like that with Nance. Again, it goes back to the efficiency of his game. And that's why I think he's such a great compliment with this group, because he doesn't have to always have the ball in his hands. And the other part to that, David, and this is something that Hubert stressed a couple of weeks ago when we talked to him in Charlotte. He used to talk about how Brady Manek had never been past the second round of the tournament. He really, really wanted to go to the next weekend of the NCAA tournament. That was one of the reasons he went to North Carolina, and it fueled him and drove him all year. Well, Pete Nance has never even been in the NCAA tournament. And now he's gone into a situation with a team that's number 1 in the country and is a favorite to win the national championship. And that's all he cares about. And he knows, and he's been told, if you play the way you could play and this team wins a national championship, you will be a part of something forever that is special, but it also enhances your NBA possibilities. So he has embraced that 1,000%, just like Manek did a year ago. And I think the chemistry the kids have with Manek is there with Nance, and it might even be better early with Nance than it was with Manek, because it wasn't just Manek. It was also Garcia, and there were some issues there. And once Garcia was gone, then Manek fully filled in that hole and everything, and the chemistry built quickly. They don't have that issue now. It's already the chemistry they had late last year. I think from a hanging out with each other standpoint is already there now.
Well, let's look at the comparison to Manek, because that's going to be, that's going to be what basically everybody's got to live up to. That's going to play that position, because Manek's going to be so revered. They're going to want that no matter what. A lot of fans are going to want that stretch guy to play just the way Manek did, and that's not there's a thousand different ways to play the power forward spot. But that's going to be what he kind of gave the blueprint of kind of how to play that. North Carolina fans really like it. But so the whole thing, you heard this question early on. Well, is Pete Nance like Brady Manek? And then you see his 3-point shooting numbers, and you think, oh, he's going to be able to stretch the floor like Manek did. But they're a little different. And I had this written down here. If you look at numbers from last year, and I'm reading it off. He shot, talking about Nance, 93 3-pointers and 241 2-pointers. So, and he shot 51.5% from two, and like we said, 45.2% from three. So his ability to make shots really good. He's not only a shot taker, he's a shot maker. But you can see the difference there. 72% of his shots were 2-pointers last year. 93 out of 334. Okay, 334 shots he took, he made 93. Look at Manek on the other hand. Manek took 243 out of his 444 field goal attempts last year were threes. So over 50%. So you see there's a big difference. He does a lot more to stretch the floor. Like you said, to your point, did not shoot as many threes as Manek did. Percentage was not nearly as high. He took shots, but he could do it in the paint. He can do it mid-range. That's one thing I've noticed about him. He's got a very good mid-range game. He can score down around the bucket. I don't know if you would call him a 3-level scorer, but he can put the ball in a bucket. A 3-level score to me tells me that he can just take over a game from all three spots. I don't know that he's the one that you would say, okay, take over a game. But, man, he averaged 14.6 points in the Big Ten. So he can do damage, kind of wherever you need him on the court. So there's a great deal of versatility offensively. One other thing, too, defensively. We talked about this on the Bake when we were doing the part on Baycott. Not only can he do that from outside, we think about him playing a 4. I think he's a guy who'll play the 5 and give Baycott some rest there. And then some of these other guys like Dontre Styles and some of these other ones Puff Johnson can kind of play that 4 when he goes to the 5. So I think we can see a little bit of that. So he can play down on the block a little bit. And North Carolina's going to play so much of the ball screen game. So you can see him. He's going to be able to screen and roll, screen and mid-roll, screen and pop. He can kind of do all that. So, there's not a big difference there. So I think he would be able to fit either position because he has versatility in his offensive game. But I look at his defensive game. Armando Baycott averaged 1.7 blocks per game last year, 1.7 block shots. And Pete Nance averaged 1.1 block. So he was just almost as many as Baycott had. He's got size. He's a legitimate, I think, 6'10", and he's really strong. The thing I noticed about him watching tape last year, he's really got a strong body. He pushes post off the block. So if a guy's trying to post him up, he's not going to get 2 feet in front of the rim and catch a ball. He's going to be well outside the lane because he's going to get moved out of there by Nance. But then Nance has got enough athletic ability too that he can block a shot in there. So may not be the ultimate rim protector. I don't know that Baycott's the ultimate rim protector, but you're talking about 2 big, strong guys that know how to use their body and know how to get position in the paint on both ends. And then, they'll get that occasional block shot.
Yeah, I think a lot more important than being a quote unquote rim protector is being someone that can alter how a guy receives an entry. The David McCormick shot late in the national
You're
championship
thinking you
game.
were going exactly where I'm going.
But you and I discussed this back in the spring. And what I asked Hubert 2 weeks ago about Nance and the different things he brings to the table, Hubert went right to his post defense and being a guy that can move a dude out. But imagine if McCormick has to shoot that shot from 3 feet further out.
Well,
It's not the same. It's not the same route. He shoots that in drills all the time. It's a different shot 3 feet
what if
out.
it's a 12-foot jump hook instead of a 6-foot jump hook?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just the law of averages.
It's not even a jump hook until suddenly he's fading and not going straight up shooting a jump shot with a 6'11" dude reaching. I think that's what changes things. I think that's one of the defensive things that Nance could bring to this team. I'm going to go back to offense real quickly because when you were talking about some of the things he could do, I thought of another Manek connection about why Manek went to Carolina and why Nance went to Carolina. Brady was very open early last year when I think it was even the opener. He had a game where he showed a lot of baseline stuff and stuff around the basket. Everybody was thinking he's just a perimeter shooter. He was hell bent on showing people that there was a lot more to his game than just shooting threes. Threes were obviously the anchor. He's a great 3-point shooter. He used that to his advantage, but he did other stuff and he wanted to show professional scouts in all different leagues and all different continents that there was more to his game. I think Nance has a lot of that stuff around the basket. There's a little bit of, hey, if I'm going to play at the next level, I've got to be able to catch and pop from 20 feet. I've got to be able to step outside the line and be a part of a 4-out, 1-in offense. If his mission is to win and become an NBA player at North Carolina, then we're going to see some of that. Brady showed he had that in his game, and it wasn't exactly like Lon Kruger was pulling that out of him when he was at Oklahoma. Well, Chris Collins, I don't think was bringing everything out of Pete Nance's game. So everything that we've seen on film, I think we're going to see a little bit that and a little bit different version of Pete Nance.
Yeah, and it's interesting how the game goes. You know, once you get into the NBA, and you know, we've already talked. It's a different game in college, but I'll go back to football for a second. And I remember when Jimmy Johnson was at Miami, and he kind of started changing the way people recruited and the way people identified positions and the way people filled positions into the NFL game, which he was later very successful in. You know, what did they do? Safeties went to linebackers. Linebackers went to defensive ends. Their less athletic defensive ends just weren't quite quick enough. They moved to the offensive side of the ball as offensive linemen. So now you get into the game of basketball, and you're starting to see now a lot of the fours guys are sliding down into fours in the college game weren't listed as fours in high school. They were wings. They were bigger wings in the 6'7" range. A lot of them. They grew an inch or two. They got up to about even 6'8". So what are they doing? They're playing them at the 4 at college, but they got the perimeter skills. So they're playing a 4 and they've got these perimeter skills. And then you're seeing guys who were listed at 4s, you know, who may have been 6'9". How many 6'9" power forwards have you seen listed in high school? And you look up and they're playing center in college, and very good center in college, because that's about, you just don't see that many guys anymore 7'1", 7'2", like, and you just see some, but kind of like in the old days, where you're saying, okay, we got to have a 7-footer. Now you're seeing, like I said, guys who are kind of listed at power forwards, and now they're coming in and playing at 5 spot. Now that even goes into the NBA. So now I know they like length. Now he may not be lengthy enough and all that, but you see a bigger guy, like you say, and you kind of wonder, you get into it, okay, is he going to be quick enough to play the 4 at the NBA level? So they look at some 5 stuff. So I think that's something Hubert Davis has probably said too. Hey, not only you can play a 4, you can play a 5. You know, you can show how you could step out at that center position and do some different things. And then you could even play the 4 and you can stretch it out. So when I look at him, I look at maybe some guys who are kind of those Swiss Army knife kind of guys offensively and they've got so much versatility. They do so many different things. And I think like I said, may not be the most athletic guy in the world with that, but their skill level's so high. And they're able to score. They're able to do different things, play different spots on the floor. And you're like, hey, man, there's always a place for a guy like that in the NBA.
If you are not a member of TarHeelIllustrated.com, it's just $8.33 a month, guys. Head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Sign up, become a member of THI. You have access to absolutely everything that we do. These podcasts that we do on YouTube are just a small fraction of what we produce. And all of the good stuff, for the most part, is premium content. You have to be a subscriber to get access to it, especially all that recruiting stuff. So many Carolina fans love basketball recruiting. They're passionate about it. David's one of the best in the business. You would have known that Aiden High was trending strong to Carolina for weeks if you were on our boards and you were reading his premium content, because he was all over that recruitment. Dina's all over football recruiting. And remember, guys, we go wherever the Tar Heels go. It's just $8.33.
And we've had some other things this week, that we put on the board about 23s and 24s. Elliot
Absolutely.
Cadu, Jackson, Elliot Cadu coming in for the weekend. We're going to have some stuff on that visit. So I think we can pretty well keep you up to date on this stuff.
And we've got some notes threads where a lot of inside intel, both football and basketball. The football one is strong right now. I've had a lot of intel that I've been able to dump into that thread. And we're also accessible. And people go on there, they tag me, ask a question. I'm there. Dina's there. Jacob's there. David's there. Kevin Roy, the whole staff is heavily involved on the board. It's just $8.33 a month. You mentioned Larry Nance. So we don't rehearse these, but I got to talk about Larry Nance. I remember Larry Nance. I remember him at Clemson. They played in a regional final in 1980, had a really good team at Clemson back. The other Bill Foster, what people used to call him back in the days when one was at Duke and one was at Clemson. His dad was really, really good, David. And the reason I want to bring this up is because when you get a guy coming into a college team that you cover whose dad averaged 17 points a game in the NBA and was a dunking champion, you got to spend a couple minutes talking about dad. What do you remember from his dad, by the way? Again, like I said, who was a Clemson player, and Pete had to get an okay from his dad to go visit North Carolina and play for the once hated Tar Heels.
I remember with a dog barking in the background. I remember
your dog's excited about Larry Nance.
Oh yeah. I remember just the dunk championship more than anything, and it was so fresh back then because you had, and I'm talking about the slam dunk contest, because at that time that's when it first started going. So Michael Jordan, Dominic Wilkins. And then, you had Kenny Skywalker, and then Larry Nance kind of fit into that. You could kind of think of the names and how those guys did. So, yeah, Larry Nance is a guy to me. And I remember that number 22 in the Phoenix, jersey, doing that. So, that was one of those guys there. You might see guys now in the dunk contest. You'll see guys in there you never heard of. But it was such a big deal at that time, and that's the thing, that he was the NBA slam dunk. And actually, I know you were trying to get away from that he did other things, but I guess that's a thing to me.
Oh no, that's okay. It was the dunk where he left from the free throw line.
I remember Tom Chambers when he won it during the golden age.
How about remember Spud Webb? He was an NC State guy, another ACC guy.
Absolutely.
Spud was only like 5'7".
You're going to Clemson. I mean, you're talking about old-time Clemson basketball. And, I'm going to tell Mike, because I was really, really young. I mean, man, I was small. We're talking 5, 6 years old. But, man, I remember Tree Rollins, I just lived outside.
Tree Rollins, Stan Rowe.
Tree Rollins. Clemson came in Tennessee and played the Volunteer Classic. And I remember seeing Tree Rollins play. So
Dan, the team that Larry Nance played on, John Campbell, Mike Epley, that was a really, really good team, man. Really good team. They had some really good team there from the Rollins era through the Nance era. But anyway, enough about Clemson basketball. I was just curious what your memories of Larry Nance were. But he was a long guy, just like Pete. Pete kind of has a similar physique. I don't think he's the athlete that his dad was. But one of the things that struck me talking to the guys, not just in July, but more in Charlotte, because they'd had a chance to see Pete for a while, they all said he's a lot more athletic than people realize. He's got more explosiveness in his game. And I'm looking forward to seeing what that is, because if he has that dude stuff in his game, along with all the skills and efficiency and the IQ that we're talking about, then he might be an even better complement to what they have coming back than we originally thought when he went ahead and popped for the Tar Heels.
He's somewhere in between. So we talked about a while ago about the Manek comparison. Well, he's going to stand out there and be a catch and shoot robot. He's got more to his game than that, more athleticism than that, can do different things. But I'll hear people say too, well, his dad was NBA slam dunk contest, so he's got to be that kind of athlete. No, he's not that kind of athlete, but he's in between. He's more athletic than some people think he's a catch and shoot guy. He's not quite as athletic as the guys who think that DNA makes him an automatic slam dunk champion. He's in between that. So like you say, it's going to be, I want to see how he fits with his team. And like I said, this was a guy that even before he came out, when it was rumored, it took a while to decide if he was going to do that, because he wanted to test the waters, get the feedback from the NBA combines and all that in the spring and from Chicago, and kind of see where he fit. But the word was, he was coming out. And this is a guy that we'd sat on for about 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, waiting to see what he did. And to me, it was an obvious call. And like I said, we named him 6 weeks before he ever, decided, as soon as he put his name in the portal, but then waited, we said, hey, this is the guy if he decides to do it. So like I said, obviously we're interested to see how he does.
No doubt about that. If you're interested in what we have to say about Armando and Pete Nance playing off each other, listen to the Armando Baycat podcast. So we don't want to rehash everything we said in that podcast about the two of them playing off one another. We really got into how he helps Armando and makes Armando better, and likewise a lot of two-man stuff, high-low stuff that we talked about in that podcast. That's here on our channel, Tar Heel Illustrated on YouTube, and that's also on our site, tarheelillustrated.com. For David Sisk, I'm AJ. We appreciate y'all stopping by.